All right, recording once again. Really quickly, I'll show you where you can find more shaders, right? Or what kinds of things I usually look at. First of all, let's see. Is it here? No. Here? Yes. Let's see. Entourage. There we are. Right. You know, something that just gives a little bit of texture. Maybe if I'm thinking something's concrete or. And I try to find these things. Sometimes you can find these things by like saying concrete texture or something like that. Other times you can just say like, give me a grit texture, give me a ground texture, give me a wall texture. You can actually make these yourself. There's ways to use the render clouds and the noise generator in Photoshop and then turn them into different patterns for what it's worth. This looks more like plaster that's slowly wearing off the wall. Same with skies and backgrounds and things like that. So typically what I find myself doing is saying, all right, Magic Google Box, give me, let's see, grit, wall, texture, high res. And I go to images, I go to tools and tell it that I want, I don't know why it's not giving me the option. There we go. Tools, size, large, right? Then you can see I start to get textures and I can start to pick and, I might find stuff go, ooh, that's kind of cool, but I don't need it now, but I might save it and throw it in the folder for later anyway, right? Really quickly, there are some tricks to this. Particularly, I don't feel bad showing you guys this since we're not actually doing this for money, right? So sometimes these places will want to charge you stuff. Like here's photo stock, and there's a watermark there or something. Let's see what this looks like. Or sometimes they disabled the right click. If that happens, all you have to do is go to View, Developer, Inspect Elements. You can then select this. You can start to see the code underneath. You can see that's a JPEG. You can click there and open up that JPEG up by itself. Then you can right-click it and not have a problem. Right? Harkens back to the good old days when, originally when I first taught a digital media course back in 2001, like I would show people how to create their own websites, do their portfolios as a new thing. Now everybody's like, whatever. Right, so anyway, just sort of, you can get under the hood with your web browser and see the HTML, the CSS, and the PHP behind that's driving everything here. You can also just go to sources. You can find all the images that are being used in this. And again, you can begin to open the image in a new tab, copy it or whatever. So that's actually not that large. Say, open this up in a new tab, right? There are watermarks on this one, so that one's kind of lousy unless you just want a small part of it. Let's see here. Some of these, they just disable your right-click function through JavaScript. So you can go right around that. That's like a speed bump. You just drive around it. Say, whatever. All right. Yeah. So a lot of these, you can pick something that, again, I don't be afraid about getting something that's maybe highly textured. I don't know what's taking this one so long. Let's try, well, that's Pinterest. Sometimes you can find lots of interesting stuff on Pinterest, but then trying to find the right version of it from Pinterest is like a wild goose chase. Let's see. I'm not going to wait around on that forever. But let's say I wanted to add maybe a texture to some of these walls, or maybe the railing here. I don't know. Let me just pick something and we'll play around with it here and test some things out, right? Sometimes I don't know what's going to work well or what's not going to work well until I try, right? Sometimes I find the perfect texture, but it's just too small, and so then I have to start to make it larger. So let me try that. We'll make this part of doing that. Have you guys used clone stamp tool to sort of smooth things out and try to blend things together? Yeah? All right, so this will be practice for some of you. Open with Adobe Photoshop. Be in one more layer here. Okay, so we have that one, we have that one. This one looks so much nicer. I'll work within this one. Why not? So it's a background. It's a flattened JPEG. I'll double click this layer, hit enter. All right. What else? Let me just select it, copy it, paste it in here and see its size. Yeah, it's not actually too bad, size-wise. But if I really wanted this texture, I might, yeah, okay. So let me just undo that. And let's go back to this texture and I'll make it a little larger. And the key thing is, in this case, I really want to make sure that this doesn't look like it's sort of tiled and repeated over and over, right? That would look completely patently ridiculous, right? So in this case, I have some clone stamping, some strategic sort of copying to do in order to try to avoid making it look like it's one of those tiling wallpapers, right? So first and foremost, I'm just going to go to canvas size, and I'm going to change it. All right, so let's make this twice as big in both directions. So that would be 2240. 1680 would be 3760-ish. Hey, all right, there it is. There's this. Oops. So I just copied it and pasted it. In this case, I might go to transform, and I might rotate it around a bit just to make sure I'm not getting something that's too repetitive here. I might even bring in another texture in order to sort of avoid that. I can always go back and find those edges and start to clone stamp them later. But at this point, I just want to make sure I don't have odd repetition. So I'm just pasting again, transform, rotating some things around. Yeah, I'll make that a particularly dark area right there. Hit enter. Paste. Control T for transform. I'll add this over here. There we are. Paste. Oops, hit enter. Paste. Transform. Let's move this thing around. Let's rotate it a bit. Hit enter. Paste. Right, there is it. I mean, it's odd, right? There is like a craft to this, and it takes almost as long sometimes as it does with your pencil and trace paper and stuff and your triangles, right? At least to make a beautiful drawing. There's no shortcut to make a beautiful drawing, that's for darn sure. All right. Rotate, let's see. I'll put this over here and just add that there, right? So now I can always think about maybe merging all of these layers. Clone stamp tool is a brush tool. It's this one right here. It looks like a stamp, like rubber stamp. You can get something notarized. All right, clone stamp tool. If you want to draw extra cherries somewhere, you're all set. Everything's Jake. I don't know why they showed that as an example. I guess you can see why, maybe, I don't know. So clone stamp tool, first and foremost, it's a brush tool, right? So I'm going to go up and look at the size. That seems a bit large to me. And then I'm also going to look at the shape. In this particular, I want to make sure that it has feather edges, right? I don't want to create more seams with a hard edge, right? I want that soft edge so I can feather in between things, start to work out some of those rough spots where, you know, you start to see diagonal line. You don't want to see that transition, vertical line under horizontal line. Although there is some interest to this in that it almost looks like somebody could see the trowel marks, right? If somebody was applying plaster, you know, there's maybe a lap underneath this somewhere, right? I don't know. Anybody ever done that? Anybody work with plaster? Anybody work with tile? You're spreading the thin center out before you lay the tile down? Yeah, this is thin set. When it gets on your jeans and everything comes out. All right, so soft round, right. I'm going to go ahead and change this, make it smaller. There we are. And now, one last thing. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move my cursor around. Can you guys see where my cursor is? What happens when I hit, in this case, my Option button? I think on a PC it's Alt button, Alt key. Does that change your cursor from the brush to some sort of target? Yeah. So I click there, and now I can go through and lighten some of these things up here. Try to take out some of these, or add where I missed a spot here. Whoops. Try to take out some of these. Really, no. See, that's a little too bright, so it looks smudgy. So maybe I do this and just sort of give it a little more texture there. What you don't want to do is go too far and then suddenly you have, again, repetition. Extreme repetition is bad, right? I'm just going to smooth some of that out. You know, it's kind of an interesting, let's see, when I look at this, I can really see where it's really bad, right? So that seems odd. I'll fix that. Why not? Same thing here. I'll fix this really quickly. Oop. See that repeating? I don't want that. Undo, undo, undo. So that's where I go into the Option or Alt key, select another spot, target, and then I can start to drag around and there, right? Final stamp tool, I just recommend being patient with it, right? It's kind of like a magic tool, but it does require a little bit of nuance to it, right? It's not like something you can just hit and it's an easy button. All right, so that'll work for me. Good enough for me, anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. Now it's asking me if I want to save it as a PSD. Why? What's the difference between a PSD and a JPEG? JPEG flattens everything to one layer, right? I only have one layer, but it's not flattened as a background image, so it wants to save it as a PSD. PSD save all of those layers. So as you start to collage these things together, save as a PSD is your working file. Then when you have something that you want to like submit to me at the end of this weekend, you can save as a JPEG, right? So you have a PSD, you can turn layers on and off, you can move things around still, right? The JPEG is like the photograph you took of all the trace paper. Okay, so in this case, I'm just going to pick JPEG and save. It's going to say, are you sure? And I go, yes. It's not that important of a texture to me, right? Select all, Control A, copy, Control C. And now I'm ready to Control V it into this, right? Look how large it is. Yes. All right, Control T, transform. Go ahead and scale this down. So now that actually looks like that'll fit in that wall, doesn't it? All right, great. Which is what I wanted. That's what I was going for. You better hope at this point, after doing all of that it's going to work. Now, a couple of things. I might still distort this and try to match it up, and try to match the perspective, particularly if it's far away, try to get that texture so it doesn't look too large, right? And then I might do it again back here. If I want to do it on this one, I might try to shrink it down more, right? So in other words, the patterns I'd see would be the same, right? The texture, but it'd be smaller because it's further away, right? So again, just think about this stuff for a moment. You can begin to see how this could work. So with this turned down, the transparency or the opacity of it turned down, so it's slightly transparent. I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Distort, and I'll go ahead and try to match up with this vertex to vertex here. Try to match up with that. Try to match up with that. And boom. All right, now you can see this is writing above all the other layers. I'm going to go ahead and move this down in the stack of layers here until it's actually just like, I don't know, just right here. There we go. Oh yeah. I'm going to bump that opacity up really quickly. Now I'm going to pick which kind of overlay layer to use, right? difference is actually kind of tempting. But I might just pick soft light. Yeah. And now, last but not least, I have my brush tool, my clone stamp still selected. I'm going to go back up to my selection tools. I'm going to find that polygonal lasso tool. That looks like it's going to be the easiest way to just sort of cut this out. I'm just going to go around these hard edges. Let's really quickly, oops. Sorry about that. No, stop. Yeah. Okay. I don't know what that was all about. There we go. Let's get her out of the way for a moment. I'll put her right back in there. So I'm going to go ahead and just go around this part that I don't want. Make sure I still have that layer selected. I don't want to delete something out of a different layer, do I? And hit delete, right? Now suddenly we have. Now what's interesting about this, again, is that I have this texture. I also have this base rendering. You know, if this is starting to look kind of weird, I can always go back into that base rendering. And let's see here. Base rendering. I can always use again, another brush tool, like in this case, the burn tool. Make sure it's feathered, maybe up the size a bit. And I can always darken things, right, where they hit, right? Except I wasn't actually on the right layer there. Oh, darn, crud. There we go. Redo. All right, where to go? It's this one, right? So I could always try to darken parts of that up if I wanted to, especially around the edges where I think there would be some sort of shadow. I might then change the overlay layer there, the overlay type. Soft light's kind of looking kind of weird, maybe overlay, and then just adjust the opacity down a bit, right? Okay, looks like a dirty wall. That's going to bug me as well. I'm going to go ahead and select this layer, and I'm just going to select the wall itself, and I'll use the dodge or the burn tool there as well. So, is anybody else really anal about their work and like, you know, I'm not alone, right? Like, everybody here is like, if I'm going to pin this up and stand next to it and own it, it better be like excellent. You know what I mean? Right. So, that's I just have this. It's not a good thing because I'm also a procrastinator as well as a perfectionist. So, yeah. However, you know, I could start to darken that up a bit, and there we go. Again, just sort of make it pop a little more. And I would do that on each of these, right? It could be the same thing along the ceiling too, right? Sometimes I just start to brush away. You know, it's a little harder when you have the crisp shadows, so you know you can always play around with that dodge and burn if you have just the screen capture from a rendered mode view. You know? Like when you just go to the edit, the view pull down and capture. You know, for those of you where your ray trace is just taking ridiculously long or something's goofed up, right? That's why I wanted you to do both ways, so you can pick one or the other if you have to. If you're really having problems with your GPU and Rhino rendering, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want, you can always download, again, I can, if somebody reminds me, because I might not remember, I can always add links to some third-party render engines that you might want to play around with as well. Right? I really don't have it's like I don't own stock in Rhino or Autodesk. So I'm always like, you know, if you can find something that's free or that does this stuff, but suffice to say, you do need to learn some of that Rhino and Autodesk stuff. So, and Adobe stuff. Unfortunately, they went to subscription model, so they can just continue to like, it's like a vampire squid just draining the money out of your wallet, right? All right, enough of that soapbox. Anyway, how are we doing? Is that making sense? Right? So again, I recommend playing around. If you see a tool there or you have something you're trying to accomplish and you don't really know how to do it, try Googling it. Try Googling it. You'd be surprised by how many people have a lot more time on their hands than I do, or you do. And they make like these little tutorials or instructables on YouTube or wherever and just show you how to do some of these things. And some people that do it are pretty amazing at what they do. So, right? Yeah. So I could continue to brush around and things like that. I kind of want to do that. I feel like that'd be fun, honestly, just to sort of brush around and add a little more tone in some places. Except that didn't work out, and the reason why is I want a bigger brush. Yeah, there we go. Let that feather out a little more. And then back here in the back, darken that up. Up here, really darken that up. There we go. So you can begin to apply depth, right? You don't always have to do that through blur or depth of field. You can begin to talk about depth in a way where you start to see legibility. Whether that's highlights and shadows, whether that's tone and detail. Sorry, got down her back. Shadows without a person. Oh my gosh, that's really easy to do. Don't be afraid to take your time and edit. I always call it sort of, there's editing and there's auditing, right? Like trying to make sure that you didn't screw something up, right? So going back through and making sure everything, she really sort of pops out. So, you know, I might, he does too, honestly. And there's a big difference between her and her and though, you know, like, so my people are kind of the weak link here, I think, as far as there's no consistency with them. So that's where I might start to think about let's see, even turning down their opacity a bit, right? You know, I'm not going for photorealism here. In fact, I want the architecture to stick out, and so the humans show some scale, but they don't necessarily have to be 100% perfect here. Let's see, there's them. And then, you know, maybe there are rules on like the closer they are, the more they stand out or whatever, but you know, so already it's starting to make a difference. It makes a big difference on my screen. The projection looks a little odd to me, so sorry about that. I know that's all you can see is the projection. I wonder if any of these people knew that they were going to be like on a site that gives out their image and you can clip them out, and you know, like you ever wonder that? Like how many of these were just like some weirdo like taking photos of random strangers, or hopefully they got like people's permissions. So, anyway, I can't worry about that. You could always have your friends, you know, pose, you know, start putting in people you know in your renderings, classmates. It's always kind of weird. Just don't get the people that are like really outgoing and like stick their tongue out when you take their picture. I don't understand that. Like what makes somebody do that? Honestly. Okay, same with the trees. That tree really stands out. You know, I bet I could tone that down just a little bit more. And if you keep that PSD, you can always come back and just continue to make adjustments as you go, right? Now I can see a little bit of that architecture behind, right? Yeah, all right. Any questions? You guys know what to do on Monday, right? Clear as mud? All right, then it's you're dismissed. If you feel like sitting around working on this and getting some feedback or need any help, I'm here till I get paid till 11:15ish, right? So, but if everybody leaves or they're just screwing around talking, I'll leave too. I have plenty of things to do. We're all busy as hell, right? Yeah. So. I'll stick around if you guys want to stick around, but if not, I have plenty of other things to do as well. I'll stop recording though. How's that? I should have stopped recording, you know, before I said that.